Today we're going to talk about Saint Bilvamaṅgala, one of the, let's say, thousands of saints, where we can relate to the life, the process through which the saint has gone through. So the first point, let's say the first question is, why should we recourse to the life of saints? Why should we look into the lives of saints? Many, many years ago, Guruji was prodding us and telling, you should read about the lives of saints. Okay. Better? Okay. So saints are actually a living example of a life of devotion to the divine. And there are so many examples of saints having attained the grace of the Supreme Being. Whether you call him Krishna, Narayana, Narasimha, irregardless, so many saints can exemplify from their life, from every day, their day-to-day life, how they lived. They've had their ups and their downs. The lives of the saints have not been easy. When you read into the lives of some of the saints, there's great tragedy. We went to Greece some weeks ago, and on the island of Zakynthos, there is a saint called Saint Dionysius. And he became a saint because he forgave the man who actually killed his brother. That must have been a great challenge for him, knowing of what had happened and seeing the person who had murdered his brother. But yet, this was a turning point in his life. So many saints have had to overcome challenges, tribulations, difficulties in their life. And by doing so, they could focus their mind exclusively on the divine, on their spiritual path. But it wasn't easy. Is your life easy? I've yet to hear somebody say, yes, it's really great. When you come into the proximity of a Sadguru, he doesn't make your life easy. He is going to challenge you. Yeah, he's there to challenge you. He's there to challenge your mind. So your life will not be easy. Whether you're wearing yellow, whether you're wearing orange or red, it doesn't matter. You can ask any of the swamis, the brahmacharis, if their life is easy. No, it's not. So the saints are actually perfect reminders that we too are subjected to very similar challenges in our lives. We face the same challenges. We all have a mind, unfortunately. But this is the greatest tool for our life. Depending on how you use that mind, can take you to hell or to heaven or beyond heaven. But we've all been given a mind. And it's how you focus that mind that makes all the difference in your life. You've heard this before, I'm sure. And you'll hear it again, I'm absolutely certain. But due to the way that the saints have overcome challenges, the way that they've chosen to use that mind to focus on the divine, they become a great inspiration. There's many, many amazing, inspiring stories of the saints, of how they've changed and influenced others in amazing ways. How they may have converted the worst sinner into the greatest saint. So the saints are an inspiration for humanity and a reminder of what it takes to forge a sincere, a truly dedicated relationship with the divine. Now we're going to have a look at Bilvamaṅgala. So we have to understand, when we look at a saint, it's not like when you watch a movie is composed of many, many individual clips, all put together, thousands upon thousands of moments. Now we're going to look at the life of Saint Bilvamaṅgala. And most people might look at it like it's a clip. It's a story, has a beginning and an end. But actually, there was a time before that life, that incarnation. And of course, it set the stage for this story we're about to go through, his current life, let's say. It's the same with us. Each and every one of us have been able to come here due to the grace of the Divine Mother. I've heard from stories from people that have tried multiple times to literally come here, to arrange a flight, a bus, a car. Even some people were just on the bicycle. Maybe by accident, or maybe consciously, they really tried, and they just couldn't come. It wasn't possible. And when the right circumstances favored them, they were able to make it here. And Guruji said, nobody comes here by mistake. It's all by design. It's all by her grace. The Divine Mother knows exactly when to bring the person towards the Supreme Being, towards the Lord. Nobody meets the Sadguru by accident. Nobody has the ability to become a devotee of the Lord by accident. Years ago, when I was traveling with Guruji, just the two of us were sitting at the airport. We're sitting at, in one of these like Starbucks or coffee house or whatever it was. Guruji was sitting there reading his saint's book. I was sitting there on my phone, going through messages. And a guy just rocks up. He just comes to the table, sits down, puts his coffee there, sitting next to Guruji, opens his newspaper. And he starts reading. And I'm like, who is this guy? Just some random guy. He's just sitting there drinking his coffee, reading his newspaper, sitting next to Guruji. He has no clue who he's sitting next to. He's just some random guy sitting next to another seemingly random guy. But Guruji's not just some random guy. When he's finished his coffee, he gets up, takes his newspaper, he leaves. Even to have that amount of proximity, you have to have attained a certain punya from your previous incarnations. And Guruji said many years ago, when he was materializing one of the Hiranyagarbha lingams, this is a lingam that contains the whole of the universe. He said, you must have all done something very great in the past. So it's not by accident that anybody's here now. You have all achieved great things in previous incarnations to be on this path of bhakti, to have this proximity and that association to a Sadguru. But it makes my mind boggle sometimes. How is it possible that we get to meet somebody like Guruji? I know some people in this room, they weren't spiritual at all. In this current life, there was no spirituality, nothing. They had no desire to do yoga, do some nice bendy postures, to meditate. It just wasn't in them. And yet they met Guruji. And then suddenly their lives changed like this. And you think, how is that possible? They weren't spiritual at all. They weren't even looking for spirituality. And Guruji enters into their lives. It's due to the previous life, the work that they've done in previous incarnations. And that we don't see. But yet the Sadguru sees it. He knows exactly who he has to connect in this lifetime. So we come into the story of Bilvamaṅgala. And of course, in the incarnation where he was known as Bilvamaṅgala, he was a very holy personage, a very holy figure, a great inspiration. But yet, there was a previous incarnation that set the stage for this life. So prior to Bilvamaṅgala's incarnation, that life, he lived as a renunciant, a sannyasi, very dedicated, and he was a great devotee of Lord Krishna. One of the things that he loved the most is he loved to organize Bhagavatam festivals. Many years ago in this tent, Guruji gave the commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam. And this is what he used to do in that incarnation. So he'd organize many festivals, and he'd go through and do the katha, the reading of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And at the end, there would be a big feast. For all who were gathered, he would feed all the people. Of course, this is not a cheap thing to do. It takes a bit of money to be able to provide all that food for everybody. So after one such festival, he didn't have enough money to provide food for all of the people who were present. So he decides to go and search for some money. And as he's searching around the town, he comes to a funeral pyre where people were beginning to leave. And he comes to the point where the body is laid out on the funeral pyre, that the flames are burning. And he sees that it's a dead body of a princess. She's young. She's about 18 years old. And on the body, there are many precious jewels. There are diamonds. And he's thinking, well, she's not going to need these. So maybe I can take them and I can use them for the service to the devotees, to Lord Krishna. So he decides to reach out. He wants to put his hand in the fire to take the jewelry off of the body of the princess. Just as he's about to do this, he hears a voice. And the voice says, "Stop." He's shocked. Right, where's this voice coming from? There's nobody else around because everybody's left. The body's just burning. And he's looking around. And the voice says, "Don't take my jewelry. If you wish to take jewelry, go to my father, the king." And he realizes then that this is the voice of the dead princess. The soul hasn't yet departed. And somehow he's hearing that communication. So he hears the voice of the dead princess. "If you want to have wealth, go to my father. Underneath my bed, you will find a large treasure chest filled with jewels. Surely he will give it to you." So Bilvamaṅgala, in his previous incarnation, the sannyasi, hearing this, he goes off to seek the king. When he finds the king and tells him the story of what's happened, the king's very surprised. So sure enough, the king goes into her room, looks underneath the bed, and there is a treasure chest underneath. Opens it, many precious things inside. So the king is very, very happy, and he gives it to the sannyasi, Bilvamaṅgala in his previous incarnation. So Bilvamaṅgala takes that, and he goes off, and he uses this to purchase all the food that he needs to feed the devotees. So they're having the feast afterwards, but yet a few more people are coming, a few more devotees are arriving, and he realizes he doesn't quite have enough food to feed the new people coming in. So he's thinking, where can I get some more money? So he's thinking about the body of the princess. So he goes back to the funeral pyre, and he goes up to the body, and he takes the necklace off of the dead, burning body of the princess. And as he's leaving, again, he hears a voice. It's the voice of the dead princess. And she says, "Because you have not listened to me, because you have gone against my wish, I curse you that in your next life you will be a slave to lust." So in his next incarnation, Bilvamaṅgala indeed, in his life, he becomes a slave to lust. Interestingly enough, that dead princess also reincarnates, and she becomes a harlot, a prostitute, by the name of Cintamani. So this sets the scene for the life story of Bilvamaṅgala. So looking at Bilvamaṅgala's early life, he was born into a very good Brahmin family due to the punya that he had amassed in his previous incarnation, being a great devotee of the Lord. He was born into a wealthy family, a good family, with good values. He was brought up in a very good and a righteous way. He was cultured in the right way. And of course, due to that tradition, he was also married into a good family. He had a nice wife, also well-cultured, well-mannered, understood the traditions, followed the traditions, all the rituals. And he became, of course, a householder, a grihasta, had children of his own, and he lived a good life with his wife, with the family, with the children. And he was also very dedicated to the family. But there's always a but in life, isn't there? Sometimes things are going nicely, and sometimes there's a bump in the road. This is where this curse kicks in from the previous incarnation. And due to the poor association that Bilvamaṅgala had, he had some friends that were not, let's say, as righteous as he was. Their minds were not focused on the spiritual, but on the very material. So his friends decided to take him once to the house of a harlot, a prostitute's house. And there he met Cintamani. She was a very young lady, 16 years old, very beautiful. She could sing. Somebody's whistling behind the curtains. Very beautiful, curves in all the right places, you know. She could sing bhajan kirtan very, very beautifully. And he was entranced by her. Once he had set his eyes on her, he couldn't take them off. He couldn't think of anything else. He forgot everything else. He forgot about his wife, his family, his business. From that moment on, his mind was captivated by her, which was the reincarnation of the dead princess. His mind was only focused upon her. And so as a result of this, he completely let go of all of his duties that he had in life towards his wife, the children, his work. And he got into the habit of going to see her every day because his mind was so attached. Every day he was there. So, this comes to the point of falling from one's path. I've taken this verse from the Gita, chapter 16, verse 16. In this chapter of the Gita, of course, Krishna is talking about the demonic and the Devic qualities within humanity. We all have these, but the question is, what are we going to focus on? We have two qualities inside, the good and the bad. It reminds me of a cowboy film many years ago, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And what are we going to focus on? The negative qualities or the positive qualities that we all have? So Krishna says to Arjuna, Aneka chitta vipramata moha jvala samarvata prashakata kamal bhogesho patanti narake shacho. Bewildered by so many fantasies, caught by the net of delusion and addicted to sensual enjoyment, they fall down into hell. So Krishna is talking here to Arjuna, and he's warning him, just like Guruji warns us all the time. Guruji's been giving some amazing satsangs during Navaratri, and he's reminding us, he's warning us, be very, very careful where you focus your mind, because these may become your habits, and your habits will lead you to ruin. Krishna says here, bewildered by so many fantasies, caught by the net of delusion. So like Bilvamaṅgala, my question to you is, how many of you grew up in a good family? Okay, quite a few. Good to hear. Not very rich, but good. Yeah? You had good parents? Yeah? Okay, about 6 of you. Very nice. Hopefully the people looking online, maybe there's more out there that have had good family. Good parents, good values in life. But how many of you went off the rails in life? Okay, I think there's a lot more people that didn't put their hands up but could have. So how many of you got attached to things in life? Addictions? Oh, there we go. The honesty's coming out now. How many of you got lost in life? Lost. Me, if I could put up both legs, if I could levitate, both legs would be going up now. How many of you got stuck into achieving things in life? Doing the next thing and the next thing and the next thing? Yeah. Did it lead you to happiness? No. It's very easy to get lost into this world. As Krishna says, bewildered by so many fantasies. The mind is drawn to many, many things that we think, obviously, and we think, truly, yes, this person seems happy. I'm going to do what they're going to do. I'm going to follow them. Does it really lead to happiness? We get caught by this net of delusion, thinking that this is going to bring us real happiness. We can become too addicted to sensual forms of enjoyment. Cake, drugs, alcohol, sex. I don't know, many things. Does it really make you happy? And Krishna says they fall down into hell. So he's warning Arjuna here, just like Guruji's been warning us and reminding us throughout Navaratri. Be very careful where you focus. Be very careful of the association that you have in your life. It's not only the people that you hang around with, it's also what you read online all the time. The news is always in our faces constantly, isn't it? Where do you focus the mind? What are you eating? What are you digesting? What are you taking inside of yourself? Will have an influence on the mind. So in the Hindu theology, there is something called the 6 enemies of the mind. It's called Arish. I don't know if you've heard of them before, the 6 enemies of the mind. They're present within the Gita, but I'm going to just lay them out more clearly. So firstly, karma, which is desire. You all know about desire, yes? Krodha, anger. You all know about anger? Yes, yes, yes. Lobha, greed, lust. Who likes shopping? Really? Mada, this is the sense of I, pride, that quality of stubbornness. In that, when one holds on to that sense of I, pride, it's very easy for everything to become personal in life. You know people that can take things very personally? Yeah? Moha, which is attachment. We are very attached to things. Reminds me of a story years ago. We had a family living here, and the husband came to me and he said, Swami Anashuya, I need to talk to you. I said, okay, what's the problem? So we went into the office and we sat down and he says, Guruji told me I've got 3 months left to live. And he said, it's not about me, but it's about my wife. I have a child. What am I going to do? And he was pretty much finished. He was quite destroyed. And he didn't know how he was going to tell his wife that he's only got 3 months left to live, and his daughter, young daughter. And of course, when he told her, she was devastated. Now, how many of you have ever done bowling? The game bowling? You take the ball and you roll it. And sometimes what you try to do, you have the first pin, and when you hit the first pin, it knocks down the other pins behind it. Yeah? So sometimes this is what Guruji does. It's like bowling. He knows that if he gives a message to one person, they're going to pass it on to the next person, and the next, and the next, and the next. And in this way, when the message has been sent all the way through the population, whatever it is, it's breaking all the attachments. So about 10 years later, he's still alive. But it had its desired effect. It was breaking all those attachments in the relationship. That's what Guruji wanted, to free up both of those individuals. Okay. Of course, they're still married. They're all perfectly healthy. But that's what Guruji was doing, breaking moha, attachment. The last one is Mataria, which is jealousy or envy. So all of these, kama, krodha, lobha, mada, moha, matsarya, these are the 6 enemies of the mind. We've all experienced these at some point in our life. And these all prevent you from attaining liberation, attaining a perfect, spotless relationship with God. So to go beyond these takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, isn't it? To break that addiction to shopping on Amazon Prime. Click. Just purchase that. This looks nice. I just get that. It's only €2.50. Click. I don't really need it, but it's going to look nice at home. Click. So Guruji's already been working on us. To become a devotee, you have to give up meat, fish, eggs, certain habits, attachment to alcohol, cigarettes. He's challenging us to give up our habits, our addictions, our attachments in life. I'm going to see if I can play dun, 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 a little clip from Instagram. We like to sit in our own. Hold on. Just going to put the microphone closer. Through misery and focus upon that. We don't want to go out of that. We want everything to change, but yet we don't want to change. Change that mindset, how you see yourself. And stop pitying yourself, Stop putting that, I am weak, I am sick, No, you have great potential inside of you. Find that potential. It is there. And stop weakening yourself. Because if you weaken yourself, nobody can help you. So this is a very lovely clip from Guruji. And he's given many such lovely talks. I found this extremely inspirational for myself. So I'm just going to repeat what he said. Change your mindset towards you. If you do that, everything else will be fine. So it's a statement that was given to one individual, but we can also take that on, all of us together. Because we like to sit in our own little misery. Have you ever done that? You're a bit in that negative state and you start chewing on it like a dog with a bone. You're like, why did he say that to me? Why did she say this to me? And we focus completely onto it. We go into it, So he says, you sit in your own little misery and focus on that. We don't want to go out of that. We want everything to change. But yes, We do not want to change. So we expect everything else to change, the other person to change, but what part do we play into it? Back in 2010, when we started this ashram, Guruji actually wrote down a document to help the residents at that time. He says, you have to be aware of the games that you play. Be aware of the part that you play into it. What part do I play into a drama? There's always two that plays a game of a drama. So Guruji said, we want everything else to change, but we don't want to change. So he says, change that mindset of how you see yourself. Very, very important. Change your perspective of yourself. How do you change your perspective of yourself? We'll talk about that. So he says, stop pitying yourself. I am weak, I am sick, I don't have enough money, I'm not. No, you have great potential inside of yourself. It is there. And stop weakening yourself, because if you weaken yourself, no one can help you. Very powerful words. If you keep weakening yourself, you can even have God by your side. It will not help. He's giving you all the opportunities, will not help. Because you're not able to take those opportunities. You are focused into weakening yourself. This is why I've taken this verse, chapter 16, verse 16. Addicted to sensual enjoyments, they fall down into hell. One of the biggest enjoyments that we can have is our own negativity, because we focus and we indulge the mind into it so much. This is exactly what was happening to Bilvamaṅgala. He was completely indulged into Cintamani. 100%. Forgot about everything else. And unfortunately, he had to pay the price for that. As we have all done, I'm sure, over time. But there comes a turning point. So the time of Shraddh, which is Pitru Paksh, had arrived. So we did Pitru Paksh just before Navaratri. It's a period of 16 days where traditionally, in a Hindu tradition, the eldest son of the family goes to offer the prayers to the ancestors that have passed before them. So Bilvamaṅgala, his mind is really only focused on one thing. That's the prostitute that he's amored with. His mind can't get enough, his body can't have enough. And he knows that he has to go off to this ceremony, so he goes. But he's not really there. When he's there, his mind is not with the ceremony. The priest is doing the ceremony and helping him. But even he's not attentive. He doesn't really want to be there. His mind is only focused in one place. So due to that infatuation, that passion, he gets up and he just walks away from the ceremony, half done. He's not thinking about his father. He's not thinking about his ancestors. There's no care at all. Gets up and walks off. And he goes down to the riverbank. Now it's quite a stormy day. It's raining, it's very windy, and there's a lot of turmoil on the river. There's big waves. And he asks the boatman, he finds a boatman and he says, please, can you take me across? The boatman says, no, it's not possible. The storm is too strong. I'm not going to go across. So Bilvamaṅgala is a bit frustrated. He keeps looking, he asks more boatmen, nobody's going to go. The storm's too strong. So it's getting quite dark now. In his search, in his desperation, he's only got a one-track mind, and that's Cintamani, who lives on the other side of the river. So he finds what he thinks is a tree trunk that's been floating down the river. He holds on to it and he pushes himself out from the shore and starts swimming across the river. After quite some time, he makes it across. So he pulls himself out of the river, all wet, cold, and he goes to let's say, the garden of Cintamani. They have the door into the garden, but a big wall around the house. And the garden door's locked. It's quite late. So he's looking around and he sees a rope hanging down from the tree next to the wall. So he grabs it and he pulls himself up over the the wall, goes inside. And the window of Cintamani is open in her house. So he crawls in through the window. And she's in the next room. When she comes in, she's shocked to see Bilvamaṅgala standing there, all wet, a bit dirty. She's like, "What? Where did you come from? Why are you coming here at this hour?" This is like really out of the normal. She's got her normal hours, and then she's got her private life. He doesn't care about her private life. He just wants her on his terms, when and wherever. That lust, that desire, that passion has to be fulfilled. So he says, "Yes, my love, I had to come and see you. It's a terrible storm outside at that time, so I had to come by myself." She said, "What? You didn't catch a boat? You're all wet." He said, No, I went across the river by myself." She said, "How did you go across the river?" He said, "I took a tree, and I held the tree and I swam across." She's thinking, this man is crazy. It's not easy to swim across the river like this, with a storm like this. And she said, "Well, how did you get out?" Because the door was locked. "How did you get over the wall?" He said, "There was a rope down from the tree, so I climbed up the rope and I came in." She's just thinking, this man is nuts. There's no rope there. So she takes the oil lantern and she goes outside. She wants to see if what he is saying is true, because he seems a bit crazy. You know how it is. Sometimes people get so fixed on something, and you think, have they lost their mind? Have they lost the ability to reason? So this is what Cintamani is thinking. So she takes the oil lantern and she goes outside and she looks up near to the tree. There's no rope there. It's a snake hanging down. It's very similar to the story of Saint Tulsidas, no? I'm sure there's probably lots more stories where it's similar, like lots of Hindu saints swimming across the river, climbing up walls and things like this with snakes. So she's like, "Okay, look, you couldn't see? This is a snake? Are you deluded? Are you blind?" Bilvamaṅgala is feeling like bad. So she goes, opens the door, goes out from the garden, and goes to the river. She said, "Show me this tree that you came floating across the river with." They go down to the river, and it's not a tree, it's a rotting corpse. It's a dead body. And you know when dead bodies are in the water for a long time, they start, like, all the gases are blowing up and they're floating nicely, no? But this body's decomposing. And she said, "You've been holding on to this, and you come in my house." And she starts giving it to him. She's really, really angry. She said, You're so caught up on me, on this body. If I took the skin off, would you really love me? Would you still love me?" And Cintamani, she's going for it. Bilvamaṅgala is starting to feel really bad. She said, "You're so infatuated with this body. You left the ceremony halfway through to come and see me. You don't respect your ancestors, your family. You've given everything up. You've wasted your life for this. If you had focused on the divine, on the Lord, you would have attained him. But yet you've wasted your life on me." Bilvamaṅgala was being roasted by the words of Cintamani. Guruji was saying earlier on in Navaratri, he was saying it's very important how we use the words. Our words can really be like weapons. They can sting, they can hurt. In this moment, as Cintamani is berating Bilvamaṅgala, all of that passion for her, all of that lust, all of that desire for her, it becomes completely erased. All of the samskaras that he had from his previous incarnations had been completely burned. So this is why I've chosen this verse from the Gita. Yesham tvantva gatam papam gnananam punyakarmanam tvidvandva moha nirmukta bhajanti mam vritaha. Which means, but those who perform virtuous deeds, whose sins have ceased, are free from the illusion of the pairs of opposites. They worship me steadfast in their determination. So this is a turning point in Bilvamaṅgala's life. And we all, everybody here, has been through turning points in their life. Some more, some less. But everybody's had turning points in their life, which we're going to talk about. Now I want to ask you, what happened here to Bilvamaṅgala? He had not only a change of heart, he had a change of perspective. What was that change of perspective that he had? I'm going to ask you. Put your hand up. I'm curious to hear. What was that change of perspective? Anybody?
He had to go completely into his addiction and crash and burn to finally just wake up.
Yeah, he finally woke up. He had to go into the addiction, he had to crash and burn, and finally woke up. What was that change in perspective that he had? Because we're going to talk about perspective in a minute. Yes? Can you talk louder? I can't hear you.
He was focusing on something.
Sorry, I can't hear you because of the...
He was focusing on something impermanent rather than focusing on focused on.
Yeah, okay. He was focusing on something impermanent. Yeah, okay. He was focusing on the truth. Yes?
Cintamani said he would focus on the mind, like he would focus on the body.
Yeah. So what happened, as you have heard, there was a change. So when Cintamani was roasting him, she said, if you had developed that relationship with the Lord, you would have already attained him by now. You would have already attained his grace. There was a change inside Bilvamaṅgala, a turning. And instead of that love going towards her, that love he felt was being redirected to the Lord, towards Krishna. So the path that he was on in his previous incarnation, again, that samskara, that connection with the Lord, that relationship with the Lord was being reactivated. That curse, the time for the curse had finished. And Cintamani, funnily enough, even though she had cursed him in the previous life, due to her words, his mind had been completely refocused. His perspective had changed. His perspective of her. He bowed down, crying, and he took her feet. And he said, "You are my first guru." He realized that she had given him that capacity to refocus the love inside of his heart, not towards her, but towards the Supreme Being, towards Krishna. So this is very, very beautiful, because this begins Bilvamaṅgala's real journey of spirituality. So as Krishna said, but those who perform virtuous deeds, whose sins have ceased, and this is what happened when she berated him. That attachment, that lobha, that lust, was completely roasted in his mind, in his heart. And that love was redirected to the Supreme Lord. Krishna says, they worship me, steadfast in their determination. Okay, before we go on to continue to talk about the life of Bilvamaṅgala, I want to pause a moment and have a look at what we call key turn moments. Now, these are moments, let's say, moments that happen in time. An event, a situation takes place in your life. And it changes the way that you define yourself, the way that you see yourself. It has an impact on you, and due to this, there is a turn, a change inside, a little click. You can feel it. And sometimes it's not very big. Sometimes it's not like suddenly, yes, I'm going to be a different person. Yes, I'm going to make a change. Sometimes it's extremely subtle. You feel something's changed. And you might not even know what it is, but there is a change inside of you. Curious, how many of you have been for darshan, and after darshan, you felt that there was something different about you? Yeah? Okay. But you didn't know what it was? Yeah? So these are called key turn moments, when there's an internal change that takes place. Now, what can result from such moments? Firstly, you can have a change in your perspective. A change of how you perceive yourself is a very powerful thing. I say that again. A change in perspective of how you see yourself is a very powerful thing. When you allow yourself not to view yourself as you always have done before. So how many of us have maybe had a certain mantra going around inside of our mind? I'm not good enough. Or, why does he always say this? Or, Guruji never looks at me. Or, can be many, many different negative, let's say, statements that we have inside. But when we step out of that, and we allow ourselves to have a perspective of ourselves, not from that viewpoint, we see ourselves, we see something different about ourselves that we've never seen before. It gives space for change. And sometimes life will push you into these moments where there is that click, there is that change inside. So secondly, it's about the change of perspective of you. A perspective of yourself will change the way that you think about yourself, the way that you relate to yourself. Now, at that moment, when Bilvamaṅgala bowed down to Cintamani, it's interesting, her name, Cintamani, means it's like the philosopher's stone. Whatever touches that stone becomes gold. I remember years ago, we were standing outside the entrance of the ashram, and Guruji said, you know, Jaitreya, I can teach you how to make gold. And Jaitreya was like, oh yeah? I said, yes, Jay. It takes about 7 days, and you need lots of lemon juice. He said, oh yeah? I said, yes. You know, you can take any metal, and you can convert it into gold. It takes about 7 days. And Jay was listening very intently, you know. Of course, Guruji didn't finish all the details. He left out all the details, and then that was it. He just changed the conversation. But this is what the Guru can do. He can change anything into gold. He can take any human being and make them into a saint, into a complete lover of God. This is what Cintamani did for Bilvamaṅgala. A man that was trapped into lust, suddenly his mind was completely captivated by the love of God. Third thing about these key turn moments, a change of perspective of yourself will bring about a change in the way that you relate to yourself. And this will mean that other people can't relate to you in the same way that they did before, because you're not the same person. There's been a change. How can they relate to you in the same way? It's not possible. Sometimes this happens in a relationship. You change. They expect you to be the same person, the same way that you were before. You can't be that person. You can't go back. You have to go forwards. That's why sometimes you go on the spiritual path, a lot of your old friends disappear. Your associations, they disappear. Perhaps family, they disappear. I'm going to share 3 key turn moments in my life whilst I've been on the spiritual path. And I'm going to share them for a reason, okay? Years ago, when I was working in the reception, I used to be a Swami A from reception. That's what the Italians used to call me. And I was working normally from 9 o'clock in the morning till about 10 o'clock every night. So it was a long day, without fail, day after day, week after week, month after month. And I was becoming very resentful. Why am I working so hard? When I was living in London, I did a 9-to-5 job. I got paid okay. The work was not nice, but I got the spondulics, I got the schmal, I got the money. Yeah, and with the money, I could do what I liked. 9 to 5, relatively easy. But now I'm living in an ashram. I'm working from 9 in the morning. We do prayers earlier on in the morning, and then I'm working till 10 o'clock at least every night. And as I'm sitting there working every day, this resentment is building and building. And this resentment turns into anger. And one night, I'm sitting at my laptop. I'm uploading some stuff for Bhakti Marga on the Bhakti Marga website. And this anger is really coming out of me. And inside I'm asking, why? Why am I working so hard? And in that moment of silence, a voice comes from inside. I don't know exactly where it came from. I couldn't tell you. But it was somewhere in there. It was like, maybe Paramatma, you know. And it said, look at what you're doing. So in that quiet moment, I was just looking at the screen. And what was I doing? I was uploading information about darshan. I was wanting to let people know that Paramahamsa Vishwananda is giving darshan, and they can come for darshan, and they can receive the same love that I have received. They can experience the same love that I've received and experienced from Guruji. And I thought, wow, that's pretty incredible. And then I understood the context. Everything I'm doing is for that purpose. That's why I'm working so hard. Because actually, I want to bring everybody to experience that love of Guruji. Simple. I went from anger and resentment to passion. I was like, wow, that's really great. That's what I want to be doing. And so I sat there and I worked through to midnight. And the next day I had the same drive. And the next day. And so that was a key turn moment. It was a click inside. I know why I'm doing what I'm doing. It came from inside. It didn't come from anybody else. But I knew why I was doing what I was doing. I really understood the purpose. Everything I'm doing is to bring people to his love. Very simple. That was the first key turn moment that really, one of the many that really hit home. Second, also many years ago, I was having a dream. How many of you have dreams with spiritual beings, deities, gurus, Guruji? So it was one of those dreams. And I was walking around in kind of like a forest. And I stopped in amongst this open area in this forest. And there was something so terrifying, I couldn't see it in the dream. I was screaming at the top of my lungs, like, ah! I was absolutely terrified. Like, I've never felt fear like that before. And I'm not just talking fear, absolute terror. In the dream, if I could have shit my pants, I would have. But I was dreaming. So I was screaming at the top of my lungs. And then after that was finished, I was like, okay, off we go. Because that happens in dreams, right? It's a dream. So I walk off, And I see a line of people, like, so I walk along this line and I'm wondering, oh, what are these people lining up for? And at the front of this line, there is Ambika. She's one of the residents here. She goes, Swami, well, you be at the front of the line. So I'm like, okay, strange. So I go to the front of the line, I'm standing there, and I don't know what these people are lining up for. And then I see this black lady. She's like in her 50s, and she is strong. She is like, and I look at her and I'm like, I don't want to mess with this woman. She is really powerful. She's really strong. And she says to me, as soon as you look at a woman, you would lust after her. And she says, come here. Like, so I walk over to her and she says, lie on the ground. So I lie on the ground and she says, breathe in. So I breathe in and she says, breathe out. And as I breathe out, she stamps on my stomach here. And she says, breathe in again. So I breathe in again. And she says, breathe out. I breathe out again. She stamps on my stomach again a second time. She says, breathe in. So I breathe in. Then she says, breathe out. So I breathe out and she stamps on me a third time. And then it's like, I don't know, it's like party time. She starts literally, she's stamping on me and stamping on me and stamping, and she's not stopping. She's not giving me a chance to breathe in again. She's just going at it, stamping, stamping, stamping. And I wake up like, and as I'm waking up, that incredible amount of terror and fear that I felt inside is just something inside. It's gone. And I'd never ever connected with it before, but I knew it was done. I woke up and I could feel I was a different human being. So about a week later, when Guruji comes back from his travels, I said, Guruji, about a week ago, I had a really intense dream. I said it was like a bit traumatic. And he goes, oh yeah? And I told him the dream and he goes, good, very good. It's a very nice dream. And it was Kalima. And actually the dream happened up near to the, the Kali hut, up the road there. So for me, this was also a key turn moment where she'd been pulling all that absolute fear out of me. And that year was Navaratri. Guruji was doing the Kali dance. So I thought, okay, this is it. She's going to kill me. So what happened? We had the curtains closed, which will happen tonight. And that year, Guruji was incorporating Kali into his body. So he was all dressed up. And he went to the main deity on the main altar, and he put the trident in front of her and the sword. And before she went to pick up the trident and the sword, she started laughing. And I was like, oh no, I'm gonna die. It was like the cackle of a witch, it was like incredible. And I was really scared. But then when she picked up the trident and the sword, and she started coming down off the altar, what was coming through the body was this absolutely incredible compassion. It was amazing. It was so soft. I was like, wow. There was no fear there at all. I was like, oh my God, this is how she feels like. Absolutely, just an incredible love, an incredible softness. And I had no fear from her, ever since then. It was amazing. She was absolutely wonderful. Again, another key turn moment. Okay, third one, a key turn moment. I'm telling you these because I'm going to ask you to do something afterwards. The third one was when I started my spiritual journey with Guruji, and I first moved to the ashram in Stephanshof. It was much smaller, back in 2007. I started doing Atmakriya in 2008. It brought up so much. I didn't know what to do with it. It brought up a lot of depression. So what I did is I tried my best to push it under the carpet and carry on with my life. And some years ago, it came back up again, all this depression. And I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know how to handle it. And it was really hard to live in the ashram. It was really hard to be around Guruji. And I didn't want to be around anybody. I didn't love anything. I didn't love anybody. I didn't love Guruji. I just wanted to run away. Did you ever want to run away from your spiritual path? Yeah, I've tried that many times. And what happened? And one day I was in that real state of depression. Even feeling to be around people was repulsive. I didn't like the idea, didn't like the feeling of being around anybody. And suddenly, that little voice came out from somewhere again. Is it true? I was like, what? Is it true? I thought, wait a minute. Is that thought true, that I really don't want to be around people? And then I just paused and I thought, it's not. It's not true. I do like being around people. Then came the second question, is it true? I thought, is it true that I don't love people? No. It's not true. I do love people. More than I realize. So I was quite surprised. And then all that depression, it collapsed in on itself. It became a little dot. Finished. That was another key turn moment. It wasn't anything that had changed really on the outside. Nothing had really there was no big moment. There was no glorious words from a Sadguru or anything like this. Nothing somebody had done to me or a certain circumstance. But it was a change internally. So this is why I'm talking about these key turn moments. I've just given you 3 key turn moments from what I've experienced in my life. You've already had many, I'm sure. I'd like you to take out your phones. So all of you that are sitting here or at home that are watching online, take out your phone and write 3 key turn moments, like a message. Write your message to yourself, or if you've got paper, whatever. I want you in the next day or so to think for yourself 3 key turn moments that have happened in your life. Perhaps you was not looking for a Sadguru, for a spiritual master. Something happens and you had an interest all of a sudden to follow a spiritual master. 3 key turn moments. And these are moments where that internal change happens. You begin to think in a different way. You begin to perceive in a different way. So I want you to think about a key turn moment where you changed. Now I've put up here on the slides internal change that takes place. And I give one example of a key turn moment. For example, on a spiritual path of a devotee, when a devotee moves from I want, I need, I must have, and moves into the place of I want to share. I want to support others. I want to help. It's been interesting being with Guruji for the last 17 years. On this journey, I've seen many devotees come to meet Guruji. And they're like, where's Guruji? I have to be with him. I have to be near him. And when they start spending time in the presence of Guruji, or they start spending time in the presence with the bhaktas, the devotees, they take an Atma Kriya course, they're doing sadhana. They go from I want, I need, I must have, da-da-da-da. And it's a bit like they're being filled up, little by little, little by little, little by little. And they get to the point where they start overflowing. And they're going from I want to let's give. And there's that change. Click. And instead of it being focused on oneself, it's about others. So for many devotees, I've seen this as a key turn moment, and it's very individual for each person. depending on the time that you've spent with people, with the devotees, or doing your sadhana, or doing your puja, or coming and visiting Sri Pitanlai, being around Guruji, or listening to satsangs online. Look for those key turn moments where there's that click inside. And you begin to perceive yourself differently. Perhaps you begin to perceive your path differently. Instead of, oh, I need this, then you start realizing, wow, I've got something of great value that I can give. That's a very different perspective. So those 3 key turn moments, when I was working all that time for months, it changed into from anger to and frustration to working with passion, serving with passion. The second one, that dream with Kali, there was that presence of that deep fear, that terror inside. I experienced life without that fear. And also, not having to run after lust. Thirdly, when I was in that state of depression, I went from not wanting to be around anybody, not wanting to love anybody, to realizing I love people more than I realized. These were big changes for me internally. Key turn moments, very, very important. So try and write down 3 of these moments that you've had in your life, because these are extremely valuable moments that you've had. And seek to share these, because when you share these, the value that you have received, the change in perspective that you've had, can have a big impact on others as well. I hope you found my examples useful, but you can also share your examples with others as well. So let's go on with the story. So Bilvamaṅgala had that key turn moment. All the previous samskaras, that desire that he had for Cintamani, was completely roasted. And then he had that awakening, that flow of love in his heart started flowing towards Krishna. He took Cintamani as his guru. His perspective of her completely changed. She was his passion, his love. And now she is his spiritual guide. And they spent the whole night singing bhajans to Krishna, glorifying the Lord. And he was in that state of ecstasy. His heart was opening so much to God, to the Supreme Being. He went to that state of bhav, what he'd had in his previous incarnation. That was awakened once again. And he had such intense longing for Krishna. In the morning, he ran out of the house. And he just ran, singing the name of Krishna. He ran down the street, and he was off. If this happens to you, please don't run around Springen too much, because the word might get out that there's crazy people living in this area. So better that you do this when you go back to your own countries. I don't know, Turkey, Czech, Switzerland. So Bilvamaṅgala, he approached a guru, Somagiri, and he took initiation into the name of Krishna. So once receiving that initiation, he was chanting the name of Krishna all the time, constantly, constantly, constantly. It was always in his mind. But had he been completely purified? Were there still some samskaras present? Yes. To completely purify a person is not easy. This can take years of dedication. Complete intense sadhana. Focus on the divine. So Bilvamaṅgala was going around from village to village, from town to town, chanting the name of the divine, chanting Krishna's name. And one day he sat down on the bank of a river and he was chanting the name of Krishna. And Krishna wanted to test that sincerity to his path, his devotion. Just like Guruji does, he will test each and every one of us. Where is your priority? Where is your loyalty? Where is your devotion? How do you know that you're really devoted? Unless you've been tested, right? How much do you love God? Well, going to have to be tested. How much are you truly sincere? Going to have to be tested. So Krishna wanted to test his beloved. He wanted to test Bilvamaṅgala. So whilst Bilvamaṅgala was sitting there chanting the name of Krishna on the bank of the river, he heard footsteps walking behind him. So he turned to look, and he sees a beautiful woman walking down the path next to the river. And he sees, and his samskaras are coming up again, that attraction. So his head follows her as he sees her going. And she walks off, and he gets up, and he knows that he's not doing the right thing. It can be like that for us on our spiritual path. We know Guruji's told us to do this, to focus on this, but we somehow just pulled away by something else that we find more attractive, more desirous, more whatever it might be. And so the same happens for Bilvamaṅgala. His interest is piqued. He sees this beautiful woman walking away, and he gets up and he starts following her. He knows in his heart he's not doing the right thing, but nevertheless, he follows. She goes off and she goes into a merchant's house. So he goes into the garden of that house, and he's reproaching himself. It's not the right thing. He shouldn't be there. But still, he wants to have one last view of her. So he goes up to the door, and he's standing there. And he knows it's not the right thing. He walks back into the garden. And in the garden, there's a very spiky plant. It's got lots of thorns. And he goes back over to the door again. And he knocks on the door. And the door opens, and there's a merchant man standing there. And Bilvamaṅgala says, excuse me, is there a lady that lives here? And he describes the appearance of the lady. And the merchant says, yes, this is my wife. Can I help you in any way? He says, yes, may I see your wife, please? So the merchant's thinking, well, this is strange. There's a Brahman standing at my door. What does he want with my wife? He's probably a good, righteous, learned man, so there must be a reason. So Bilvamaṅgala says, yes, I would like to see your wife. So the merchant calls for his wife. She comes to the door. And Bilvamaṅgala takes her vision in. And as the eyes are enjoying the vision of what he's seeing, inside of his heart, he knows it's not the right thing to do. He becomes so angry inside with himself. He suddenly storms off into the garden. He grabs the plant where there are thorns. He plucks the thorns and he sticks them straight into his eyes. He's putting them into his eyes like this, destroying his eyes. His eyes are completely destroyed. There's blood coming out of his eyes. And he starts going into ecstasy. Strange, right? You would think, my God, this is a bit graphic, on disgusting, on horrendous. Yes, on one level. But he's stabbing himself in the eyes, and he feels intense ecstasy. He feels this love for Krishna. Overwhelming. His eyesight is finished. He's blinded. But in that state of ecstasy, he starts singing the name of Krishna. He's dancing around in the garden. And of course, the merchant and his wife are standing at the front door like, who is this lunatic? What's going on? He's got blood pouring out of his eyes and he's in ecstasy. And they're like, what's going on? And Bilvamaṅgala spent several days with the merchant and his wife, just telling stories about Krishna, singing the glories of Krishna. And as he's singing the glories of Krishna, this intensity, this longing is growing inside of his heart. He feels that he has to find the Lord. Again, he runs out of the house. Like at Cintamani's place, he runs out of the house. He runs out of the merchant's house. And he runs off into the forest. And he's again going from place to place, from village to village. He's chanting the name of Krishna like a crazy man. He's blissed out. And in one of the villages, he's sitting down and he's chanting the name of Krishna, really absorbed into this love. And he hears a voice. And it's the voice of a little boy. And the little boy says, "Surely you must be hungry. You've been sitting there a long time." And he hears this sweet little voice, and his mind is attracted to this voice. He says, "Yes, I'm hungry." And the little boy said, "Don't worry, I will bring you some sweets and water." So the little boy comes and he gives him some sweets and water, and Bilvamaṅgala drinks it. He feels very, very good. And from then on that day, every day this little boy comes back and is giving him sweets and water. And Bilvamaṅgala, his mind is very attracted to this child. Why is this the case? I'm chanting the name of the Lord, but yet I feel when I'm in the presence of this child, I feel very, very happy, a lot of joy. And so one morning when that child comes, he brings him the food and the water. Bilvamaṅgala grabs the arm of that child and he feels a current of energy, such an intensity of love that he's never had before. All of his arms are going like goosebumps over his body. He goes into bhav and he realizes that this little boy is none other than Krishna. And the little boy is saying, "Let go, let go." And he says, "No, I will not let go of you. I know who you are. I've been calling for you for a long time, and now I have you. I will not let you go." And Krishna says, "You are very dear to me. You have me. You are mine." So what happens is then Krishna takes on his true form. He appears to Bilvamaṅgala and gives him his eyesight. And of course, Bilvamaṅgala has the darshan of the Lord. The longing of his heart has been revealed and fulfilled completely. So what happened is Krishna asks, "What would you like?" Because often when the deities manifest, they always fulfill a wish, a boon, to give. They always want to give. So Krishna asks, "What would you like, Bilvamaṅgala? What do you want?" He said, "You've given me everything I wanted. I've had the darshan of you. There's nothing more I could want. There's nothing more in this world that my eyes long for, just for you." So he says, "Since I've had your darshan, I don't want to see anything else. I want only that. Take away my eyesight." So Krishna is very pleased with him, and he takes away the eyesight. And in that state, Bilvamaṅgala has only the image of his Lord firmly embedded into his mind and into his heart. So in that lifetime, Bilvamaṅgala, although he had intense struggles and he performed a lot of austerity, he had attained what he had come to attain. He had attained the grace. He had attained Krishna. He had lost his eyesight in the process, but he'd gained everything. And after that, he had the vision from within his heart. Whatever he could see, he would see through the eyes of the heart. So in this Leela, Krishna rid Bilvamaṅgala of all the last samskaras, the lust. Everything was burned completely into that intensity of that relationship. And this is why I put this verse here. The longing for the Lord increases. When Bilvamaṅgala was at home and he was sharing the stories with the merchant and his wife, again that longing was blazing in his heart. Mahatmanastu mam partha devim prakritim ashritaha bhajanti ananya manaso gnatva buddhadim avyayam. But the great souls of Arjuna share my divine nature, and they adore me. with a single mind, knowing me to be the unchanging source of all beings. This was the state of focus that Bilvamaṅgala had. His heart was overflowing with the grace and the love of Krishna. The vision of Krishna was firmly imbibed into his mind, embedded, rooted. And Bilvamaṅgala, for the rest of his life, he approached the Lord, knowing him to be the Supreme Being, and through the eyes of the heart could perceive the Lord present in all beings. All the samskaras had been transformed, purified. And Bilvamaṅgala knew that he was the unchanging source of everything. He was always in the presence of Krishna. He was always in the presence of his love, because he was everywhere. He could never be out of that presence. He could never be alone. How can he be alone if God is everywhere? But do we live like this? Do we have that perception? But such saints as Bilvamaṅgala do. So just to conclude, our understanding of the spiritual path can be defined by those who walk before us. They have experienced the path, they understand the path, and they may have already reached the conclusion of this path. This is why to read the lives of the saints, to know about the lives of the saints is very, very important. Guruji said this many times. And we have to understand that when we read about the story of a life of, let's say, a saint, it's not just one single snapshot. It's part of a much larger movie of life, of that soul. So life is a continuation of previous karma and punya, and brings us to this moment in time, like Bilvamaṅgala and his experience with the dead princess. We have done many things in previous incarnations. I remember Guruji's once saying many years ago, if you want to be an Atmakriya teacher, you have to have served for 10,000 lifetimes. 10,000 lifetimes, 10,000 incarnations. That's a lot of punya. So all those Atmakriya teachers out there, you've been busy little people. And we don't know what we have done to be able to have this grace, to live this life, to have this association now. So life is a continuation of previous karma and punya. Remember your key turn moments. So this is why I ask you, over the next day or so, write down your three key turn moments. Moments that had a big impact on you. And maybe they have been very subtle. Maybe there was no one around. Maybe it wasn't an influence from outside. But yet, it had that change. It had that transformative effect. There was a change in perspective about yourself and how you live life. These key turn moments help us to ultimately stay sincere to our path, to ourselves. Guruji will test you. Watch out for the tests. Guaranteed, he'll keep testing you and testing you and testing you and testing you. Many, many, many times. He's not going to stop. Even if you ask him to stop, he's going to go, nope. There's still some work to do. Tests are the only way to really determine your dedication, your sincerity to yourself and to the divine. To really hone and fashion that relationship that is forged through fire. Bilvamaṅgala, he went to an extreme instance when he plucked out his eyes. He took away his eyesight. But it was also, at that moment, an act of grace. Sometimes it looks like something on the outside, but on the inside, something completely different. When Christ was going to the cross of Golgotha, from the outside, it looked like he was in intense suffering. He was. On the inside, he was in a great state of, an extreme state of joy, because he was going to do his Father's will. Nobody on the outside could perceive that. So sometimes things happen on the external reality, but on the inside it's a very different, it's a universal difference. And the tests that happen on the outside help us to understand what's really going on inside. What is our loyalty towards our path, ourselves? What do we hold dear? What is that true focus that we want to hold for ourselves? So I hope that this has been useful for you. This story of Bilvamaṅgala and of all the stories of the saints for this Navaratri. Focus on them, meditate on them. These talks have been recorded. They will be released in the future so that you can watch them online. And take the opportunity to, so many great teachings, great satsangs from Guruji. Take them in, meditate on them, and see what it means to you for your personal journey towards the divine. Jai Gurudev. So we got some short time for questions. Would anybody like to ask any questions? We've got a microphone over here. There's a hand over there. We'd let the Rishi get some exercise.
So, Jai Gurudev,
Jai
I would
Gurudev.
like to ask a question, because at the beginning you told that the life of saints is not easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I understood so. It's not easy.
It's not easy.
So how about the situation when our life is easy? Are we so far from being saints? Or how should we interpret it? Is it kind of criteria, or how about the situation? And another question is if this life looks difficult from outside or from inside of the saint. How should we interpret this?
Okay, thank you. Nice questions. Well, how do you know your life will always be that way? That your life could be easy? Yeah, I can feel it. I can guarantee you that coming to the presence of a Sadguru, like Guruji, he will give you tests in your life. If life is going very easy, it might change. There was a couple that came here years ago. Their life was going very good, very nice. And once they met Guruji, he had an interview with them, and he said a lot of different things. After that interview, they went away. Their life went upside down. It was like, the spin cycle and washing machine. There was so much was going wrong on so many levels. Just listen to the story that Prithu shared last night about when Guruji materialized the earrings for the lady in Brazil. So what happened was that this couple, their life went upside down. They had so many problems, but their life was easy up to that point. And they came back a month later, and they had another interview with Guruji. And Guruji said, remember when we were chatting, and I said this, this, and this in that sentence? And they said, yes. He said, I was activating all your karma. So, if your life is too easy, just take the association of a Sadguru. And for sure, your life will become very interesting. So the life of being easy, it's not, your life will not be easy being a saint. Because the more that you go into the spiritual path, the more that you will be asked to give. And you'll be asked to give more and more and more, walking the path of saintliness.
And if giving is a pleasure for me, what's then?
Sorry?
If giving would be a pleasure for me, what's then? If I don't consider that difficult but easy?
Well, then you're very blessed. Yeah. But God might change the ways in which He requests you to give. And you may have to change yourself in many different ways. When I first came to Bhakti Marga, I had the history of being a scientist, and I had to run a hotel. I had to run events. I had to do things that I'd never done before. And in the path of saintliness, He might take you in very unexpected directions in life, where you may have to give and serve, and draw on resources that you never knew that you had. So the path of saintliness, you have to be very adaptable, prepared to change at any moment. And this can be sometimes challenging. And in the way that we were very used to, giving and serving can be very, very nice and is not considered challenging. But understand that God will make the path interesting and may put challenges on your way to help you be able to serve in a more broader, a wider perspective.
So if we like the challenge, are we already saints, or just should we wait for another difficult experience to come?
Guaranteed you will have other difficult experiences to come. I asked Guruji that same question years ago, actually. I went to Guruji and said, Guruji, I want to be a saint. He said, you already are. I was disappointed. I was like, really? Are you kidding me? I was like, oh no. He said, you already are a saint. I already have a relationship with my experience of him after 17 years, of the Supreme Being. But does it mean that all my samskaras are finished? Take Bilvamaṅgala. He was in that state of ecstasy. He was in that state of love after taking his eyes out. And he was going from town to town, village to village, chanting the divine name all the time. Still, he had some samskaras in his life. He hasn't been completely purified. Yes, we may be living the life of saintliness, but there is still more to go. We still haven't been completely purified. There are still attachments, and this still needs to be worked on. Okay. Yeah. Anybody else with a question?
Okay, so we have a change in perspective sometimes with situations, but then it seems like we forget also. You know, we don't always have that solidified into us.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's what I notice, you know. And then I get into same situations, I feel.
Yeah. Everybody notices that. And everybody... This is why we have what's called a day, and a next day, and a day after that, and the next day. He always gives us an opportunity every day to look to see if a certain perspective on life has been firmly rooted. Now, Guruji may give an experience, or life may give you a certain experience, and you might think, okay, I've learned that now. I've taken it on board. I'm not going to go into that kind of relationship. I'm not going to fall for that kind of desire. But yet, there is life again, offering you these opportunities. And then you might fall for it again. And you might think, okay, yeah, now why did I do that? I promised myself a year ago, 2 years ago, I wouldn't do that. But because of a certain change in perspective, a certain understanding has arisen. But yet, then again, comes the desire. Just like the story with Bilvamaṅgala, his perspective had changed. He saw Cintamani as not just being a body that he could lust after. She became his guru. And then what does he do months and months later? He's running after the merchant's wife again. So a perspective is not necessarily, it might be rooted into you, but again, absolutely, as human beings, we forget things all the time. I went to Guruji's house yesterday. I left my laptop case there, and I was running around the whole ashram wondering where I left it. We forget things, experiences, and we have to be brought again to a very similar experience that we experienced before to remind ourselves what commitment we'd made to ourselves, what change of perspective there had happened, and do we want to hold on to that and not fall into the ditch again, into that experience that we're not looking for.
That change in perspective with it's mostly for me, I notice, is with remembering God. You know, I feel like, oh, I had the change. I think I feel it, but then I forget. And then I get into work or whatever, and I get involved and I forget God. So that's what I notice mostly with that too.
Okay.
The spiritual things mostly I forget.
Okay.
I get a perspective, a strong perspective along the teachings of the Guru, and then I forget.
Keep working on it. Yeah. Keep reminding yourself. Watch a satsang a day, read a verse of the Bhagavad Gita. When you're in your car, listen to bhajans and kirtans. Create the lifestyle that's always reminding you. That's the lifestyle of a devotee. A lifestyle of being reminded of the spiritual path. Yeah. Okay, I think it's nearly time for lunch. Thank you very much. Hope you've enjoyed. And we'll see you at 5 o'clock. We have a procession today for Navaratri. Prayers will continue at 6 o'clock. Tonight is the last night, so it's a bit of an unusual night in comparison to the rest. We have the worship to 9 little Devis, where Guruji will invoke the 9 forms of the Divine Mother, Navadurga, that we've been worshipping these 9 nights, into the 9 Devis, and he will worship them. You will have the opportunity to come up and offer to them. And then we'll have the normal prayers that we're doing each night. And then we'll have what's called like the Kali dance, which will also take place later in the evening. So this is something very nice. It's a symbolism of the cutting of that ego, the head off the ego. So it's also a key turn moment. Some people really feel the presence of the Divine Mother of Kali, working on them, cutting the ego, creating that inner transformation. Some feel it more, some less. If you sit next to the front and you feel that sword, you'll definitely feel it. But it's another opportunity for transformation that we've been talking about today from the lives of the saints. So, Jai Gurudev, have a lovely night tonight. We'll see you there. Om Shanti 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 Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om. Prem se bolo Satgurudev Shri Swami Vishwananda Mahaprabhu ki Jai.